and thank you once again, and thank you for joining us on the Literacy Solutions podcast. I am your humble host, Testimony Additional, the pepper sauce. Anyways, today we will be discussing on the disability inclusion in Ebonyi State. And with me in the studio today, I have the beautiful, the amazing, the smart Nkechi Yere, Melva Uguru. She's a legal practitioner, a social entrepreneur, and she's passionate about inclusive education in rural communities. Please, can we meet you, Ma?
Thank you so much for having me. I am very excited to be here in the studio with the pepper sauce. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. You're welcome. And I hope your journey down here was not stressful.
At all.
Abakaliki is.
It is, yes.
Yes, I get you. I get.
Is.
Anyways, thank you for joining me today to discuss this. So I want to just briefly, icebreaker. Let's just discuss what disability is, examples of disability. So what do you think disability is?
Like you earlier on said, disability could be an impairment. It could be just something that makes you different from other people. But then I don't actually believe that there is anything like disability. I just
Why would you say that?
Yeah, I can say this because I've met with people with disability and I actually see a lot of abilities in their so-called disabilities.
True.
I know a person who is outrightly blind, and I have never seen anyone who sees more than her.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, because they have their inner minds and they can do what we both can do. So there is literally no disability. So what we have is a situation where a society isn't able to accommodate them enough. So we keep seeing those disabilities. It's either there is a structure with a problem with the system structure, or there is a problem with the infrastructure that will enable them live like everyone else. Then we see a disability. So that's how I see it.
You're so on point. I think I can relate to what you just said, because a lot of times, a lot of people just, overlook them. They don't prioritize them in most cases. They would rather choose someone that is able-bodied to do something. But by the time you overlook these people, what then happens to them? What becomes their fate?
Exactly.
So I clearly understand that.
And besides that, I tell people, today you are able. Tomorrow you might just be disabled. So imagine when somebody builds a home without a ramp, and you build your home to suit your current status, to suit your current situation, and then an accident happens and you can no longer access your home. So imagine if the society is structured in a way that it's accepting of everyone, irrespective of their abilities or their level of abilities and all of those. Imagine where a society is structured like that. Everything moves smoothly. If anything happens, the society is planned for today, for the future. Yeah.
Definitely. I get you, and I totally support that explanation. So let's go into talking about Nigeria as a whole now before we move down to Ebonyi State. So now, according to my research, I found out that in January 2019, Nigeria signed into law the Prohibition of Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Bill. That's after over 20 years of advocacy. So 2019, that means before 2019, people were literally struggling with stigmatization. They couldn't really move freely.
People were just left to their conscience to decide on how to treat persons with disability. And even after the law has been signed in, it's one thing to sign in a law. It's another thing for execution to take place.
That's
the thing, because how can you sign in a law as a country, yet the system structure, the system isn't structured in a way that exactly. For instance, we had last year's International Day for Persons with Disability, and one of the persons with disability who we invited was speaking, and she shared an experience where she went to a hospital and she couldn't climb into a private hospital. She couldn't climb into the place where she would be attended to because there was no ramp.
Jesus.
And then she also went, if you go to our teaching hospitals, you would see RAM, though, but in some places you will not see anything like that. So does it mean that persons with disability aren't meant to go to those, through those places?
Come to those
you know, and then you go to a hospital and you don't see you hardly see anyone. I have not seen one in a hospital that is set for sign languages. So imagine if a deaf person goes to see a doctor. Please, how will they communicate? Or someone who cannot talk? So we had a project in a rural community at Ono Akbara, where we got there, and then we met with this guy who is deaf and dumb. Wow. And he couldn't talk. Of course, he can't hear, he can't talk. And then the person who brought him also does not understand sign language. Nobody in the family understands sign language, so nobody could communicate with him. So we had to find a way to communicate with him. And we realized, and when we asked the family member that brought him, so how do you know his problems? How are you able to communicate with him? And she simply told us, so if he's hungry, he knows where the pot is. So communication begins and ends with hunger. So that's just a few of, just a tip into the plight of the person with disability.
Their family members even cater or, stick with them. I've heard of cases of people who stigmatize their family members that are disabled. They literally do not even want people to see them. They don't bring them outside. They don't want even hear them.
They don't want hear them.
They don't want hear them. They don't want loud them outside.
It's funny you bring this up because for a while now, we've been following up a particular family who happen to be very ashamed of their daughter that has cerebral palsy. So the woman told me that if she comes around, people will start asking questions and people will start pointing fingers at me. And she actually confided in me. She wasn't even confiding in me. She was actually just saying it as though it was normal. She just said that if this speaking for just die as she small, she be life for better for me, better for him, because as they suffer, me too, they suffer. How is that suffering? I know people with cerebral palsy that are doing so well, that are founders of organizations, that are so big on tech, that there's literally nothing that is limiting you as a person with disability if the system would simply just set up structures that is accepting of your disability. The difference between you and a person on wheelchair is that you walk the staircase, they walk through ramps. That's just the difference. And these things can be made available. These things can be provided. Now, imagine if the family is already seeing this person as something, an object of shame. This girl, a little girl that should be around 12, 13, she's not going to school. She's hidden in the house. In fact, she wasn't even crippled. At some point, she became crippled because she's tied down in the house. She's locked up in the house. And then after I had talked, after so many advocacy with her parents and family, they were able to release her to her grandmother, who now takes care of her. Her grandmother, she's been passed from one grandmother who wasn't taking care of her to another grandmother who now takes good care of her, but of course minus education. And we planned with the family, okay, we're going to help. We would find her a school. And the mother actually told us that she's taking her to several schools and they reject her, that they don't want someone like her. So what is someone like her in school? And I'm certain that our Ministry of Education is not aware of this.
The schools that they took her to, the schools they went to, apply for admission. What schools are these? Like, they are special education schools that are created. So now,
the thing is, the schools for special schools in Ebonyi State, some of them are privately owned. So the ones that are owned by government exist, but they cater to specific disability. Kinds of disability.
So there's also a limitation.
So there's also a limitation
from the government.
Exactly. There's also a limitation as to what kind of disability that they can cater for because of the resources available.
So what should happen to others?
Exactly. So the public schools, when she takes them to when she took her child, according to her, to the special school, they referred her to the public school. She goes to the public school, and then the headmistress she's supposed to be in primary school at that age. She's never been to school, of course. So she's
not home trained. She's not homeschooled.
Who will home train her? I say, where did they hide? Who go home train her? You know, and even for the help, the woman refused the help that we wanted to offer because she said that we will bring her out. She said it in Igbo. We will bring her leg outside for people to see. Meaning that we're going to expose her secret. So that child is her secret. So now she's just one too many. There's that story is just one too many, you know, that we've encountered in the course of our work promoting rural inclusive literacy and all of those. So it's sad.
Well, I feel like the government, since you said there's a body that has been set up by the government to set up these schools,
special education unit, Ministry of
special education unit that can actually, you know, go into these communities, go into these places. For instance, if you report this case, are they going to take it up and actually go down to the woman's place, enlighten her, so that she can actually, because this thing has to do with mental orientation as well. So if your mental orientation believes that, oh, this thing is a taboo, it's a disgrace, it's disability, there's nothing that can be done. Obviously, that is the trend here. That's the pathway you're going to follow till that child is going to grow up. But obviously, this special unit, I feel like do they go from homes to check up on these children when they receive complaints?
To the best of my very knowledge, no, they don't. But education is as of right.
True.
It is not a privilege that a few children should enjoy. It's as of right. And when we say children, there is no specification to persons with disability being excluded. So persons with disability, both children and young adults alike, everyone, if you have a right as a citizen of this country, they also have equal rights with you as a citizen of this. So education is as of right. And as of right, part of what I know to be the job description of this special education unit in the Ministry of Education is to go for such kids, such cases.
Bring them out
and ensure that they go to school. No child. I was in this state when we were young, when I was younger in secondary school, early secondary school, and we had a government that ensured that every child was in school. In fact, this government made sure that every parent whose child was hawking on the streets during school hours were arrested.
Wow, that is a very, very
they made sure that they were arrested and they ensured that every one of those children were sent back to school. And no child would hawk on the street, or you risk being arrested. Once they catch the child, they will go catch him, mama and papa, they will call explain. So if you know say you go explain, you go carry your pikin go school.
True.
And even the children that were kept in the orphanage homes, they were going to school. The children that were living in the destitute homes, especially, they have a home for persons with disability here in Ebonyi State.
Okay.
So children there were also, so if you went there during school days, during school hour, you would literally not see any child because they are all going to school.
But as of present, it is not the case.
It is not the case. It is not the case because education is not free. And, you know, poverty is relative. But in your eye, the money they have to pay might be small. But then compared with their standard of living and their standard of earning, they cannot pay that amount for all their children. So in the rural communities, my experience has been that persons with disability are considered uneducable.
Wow. So, my next question is, for instance, the case of the story you told me. This woman now, there are also children that have probably been going to that school. Have you heard of a case of any of them, you know, graduated, you have a stable job, they have a family? How many percentage can you see top of your head?
My experience. Okay, so there are a couple of these special schools that exist around here. And the ones within town, I have never heard of a case of graduation. In fact, there is one that I used to know. I still know her. I still see her around. When I was I've graduated from university since 2014 when I went to law school. And That's for you to see that University of Abuja, we did hey, I don't tell them the school I go. We did extra years because of strike and all. So you can imagine when I was in secondary school, I would see this lady trekking to school as I trek to school. So she's autistic.
Okay.
And it's a school for persons living with autism.
Okay.
So, and I would see her going to school every day. I was shocked to also see her recently to still going to the same school. And I'm wondering what is going on. And then I went to the school
to find
out, okay, so this is what I saw. And they're like, that most of them, their parents bring them here as, where to keep them. And also, so that place is where they go for keeps.
So not even for education.
Nothing really
is happening.
Nothing really happens there. So they have a place where they refer them, the ones that have grown, they refer them to Enugu. That's what I heard. And when I tried to probe further, I was cut out.
It's truly sad.
So it's sad. And then, but we have one in Opefia, a place they call Opefia here in Ebonyi State, where I know, I think it's for people who are blind or visually impaired. I know a couple of them, about 2 of them only though, just very few of them actually end up leaving school and furthering their education into the university, mostly out of poverty or outrightly because the system is not allowing them, is not structured to accommodate their disabilities. So I know 2 of them who are currently in UNN, University of Nigeria and Soka, and doing really well, to say, doing really, really well. But it's in percentage, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say perhaps just 3 or less.
In 10%, that is very, very sad.
Or less.
Very sad. So now let's talk about the level of stigmatization. Apart from even their family members now, the way, their acceptance in communities. So in my neighborhood now, and maybe if there's a person who has a disability, how accepted are they in their environment?
To answer this question, I'll tell you a story.
Thank you so much for tuning in once again and for staying till the end. If you enjoyed our show, please like, share, and subscribe. Also turn on your notification bell to be the first to know when we post a new episode. And comment, I would really like to know what you think and hear from you about this episode. One last thing, please follow on all social media platforms. Bye and enjoy the rest of your day.